It's New Year's Eve, Sunday night. You know what that means. It's Topical starts right now. A very good evening to South Africa and those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. And as you've come to know, it's a program that gives you a platform to have your say. Every week, we went out to the streets to hand over the microphone to you in the Word on the Street feature. We've invited you to join us virtually as our digital audience. We've asked you to also send us your social media messages as well as your WhatsApp voice notes. And we also followed you around your community as you sought to bring solutions to the problems afflicting you and your family. Guess what? We're turning 2 years old in 2024. And as we enter the new year, let's also remind you about the topical conversations we've had so far, which leads us to the question of the week. And we're asking you, which stories caught your attention this year? You can let us know on X. Our handle is @It'sTopical SABC. All right, let's start our journey down memory lane by looking at the story that, well, shook South Africa and beyond its borders. The story that kept the tongues wagging, the prison break of convicted rapist Thabo Bester from the Mangaung Correctional Center in the Free State in May 2022. Meanwhile, another blow for Dr. Nandipha Magudumana as the Free State High Court in Bloemfontein dismissed her appeal to be released on bail. Question: to what extent are the country's prisons porous? This story by SABC News reporter Ayanda Mhlongo, as well as our studio discussion, offers some clues. Take a look.
This is Kokstad's C-Max prison, known as ePhongweni. It's the most secure prison in Africa and home to the continent's most hardened criminals. The likes of serial rapist Mongezi Jingela, regarded as one of the worst sex offenders in South African history, are housed here. Jingela is serving a sentence of 1,092 years. Other notorious inmates who've been imprisoned here include gang boss George Gavelt Thomas, the Sunday rapist Johannes Steyn, and one of the country's most prolific serial killers known as the sugarcane killer, Tozamile Dagi, and cash and transit robber Sbusiso Tilili Mzimela, who is serving a sentence of more than 100 years. The now late Ananias Mate, another notorious rapist and armed robber, the only inmate known to have successfully escaped from a maximum high security prison, was later incarcerated here until his death in 2016. The facility does not only house South Africa's most dangerous prisoners, but those from around the continent, including Nigerian rebel leader Henry Oka.
Indeed, history, practice, performance showed that the province or the region of KwaZulu-Natal, as we are called, is maintaining that high standard of performance in ensuring that we have no or at a minimal incidents occurring of escape.
Unlike other correctional centers, ePhongweni does not have a female section. With a population of just over 1,400, many of these men will never see the light of day. It's a fortress, and chances of escaping are close to none.
In that center, we believe that nobody will come out.
Ayanda Mhlongo, SABC News, Durban.
It's in this dam that one of the bodies allegedly stolen by Dr. Nandipha Magudumana was found floating weeks after she allegedly claimed it at the mortuary as her father. This is the timeline of events from an alleged hit-and-run incident. Dr. Nandipha Magudumana allegedly goes to the government mortuary here in Bloemfontein and identifies the body as her father. A funeral parlor then collects the body, which is then found in a river on the 29th of April 2022. The SABC News team tracked down the man who found the body, who was collecting wood in his brother's yard, which is next to the river.
I found it over there. It was in the Kaiway slapsack, whatever you want to call it. He was busy picking up wood. lyk soos iets snaaks wat daar lê, ons het hom oopgemaak en toe het ons die polisie gebel.
Neighbours found the discovery suspicious even then.
I could see a lot of lights and I could see cars going through the gate of the plot and going towards the riverside. Now, those who went close, they said that that body was wrapped. The whole body was wrapped. Then I even said that, no, this one has been done purposely. There are people who have thrown that body into the river.
Well, it's believed that the body that Dr. Nandipha Makudumana had claimed, saying it was her father, is the same body that was found dumped in this river here at Kopano Nokeng in Bloemfontein. The photographs by eyewitnesses that were taken after the discovery of that body here, the date on those photographs correlates to the same month that Nandipha Makudumana is alleged to have claimed that body.
The exact same date that police gave Parliament's Portfolio Committee this week when outlining the date the body was found in the water.
The body is still in the government mortuary, because if I can just explain what happened, the body was found floating on the 29th of April 2022 in Kopanonoke in Bloemfontein. It was taken to the government mortuary. In the government mortuary, then they identified the body as the one they already worked on, of which it was claimed by the doctor on the 25th of April.
Leaving a whole community shocked that body is possibly linked to the infamous case of the escape of Thabo Bester. Griselda Lewis, SABC News in Bloemfontein.
The confidence level now in the correctional services, where is it?
The confidence has dropped. And what we find very interesting, we must first wait as a society, as a citizenry. We pay tax, we make sure that prisoners and this department is run like a machine. And we say nothing all the time until such time that ball gets dropped and this scandal come and hit the headlines again. And all of a sudden, everybody's got everything to say. Let me tell you, in a few weeks' time, this will be an old story and it will be business as usual, and the Department of Correctional Services will continue to be the hell holes they are.
Glenys Breitenbach, advocate, at the very least, I think it was in October last year that there was indication that something is awry. There was a possibility that Bester had escaped. At that point, shouldn't the government or somebody come up and say, you know what, this is what we're dealing with. There is possibility of a rapist and murderer on the loose.
More importantly, it was incumbent upon them to inform his victims, the rape survivors, to give them some support and to offer them some protection, which they failed, all the departments failed miserably to do. It's a terrible indictment on them. They failed, and those ministers should resign if they had any ounce of integrity.
Mr. Nxumalo, why wasn't the public informed about the escape? Even if at that point you didn't have all the information, but just to give the heads up that we possibly are dealing with this.
You might have learned that it was correctional services who took a bold step to say we're going out with the findings of our own investigation. Yes, it took time, but you had a situation where the service provider was sticking to his guns and saying that the person that died there is Thabo Bester. So you could only rely from the findings of the investigation to say, having conducted our investigation, and this is the point that we have reached. We then went out and released a statement to say our findings point to an escape.
But that only came after the expose in the media, isn't it?
The operator there only confirmed a few days before we went to Parliament to say it does seem like this was an escape. And we were at pains to say, give us more information, give us more information. Almost every institution that was doing an investigation complained about access to information. It was not easy. Yes, it may have taken quite a while. People do blame us for that. We can't fault them. We agree with them. But it came to a point where we needed to go out before even the operator that being chief was to saying, yeah, it's an escape. We had no choice because we're also alive to what was happening around us to say it can't go on like this.
It's a story the SABC is no doubt following closely, so keep it locked on to this channel for all the latest on this case. Now, to our most watched episode on social media at least, and that was when we had Frel Forum and the EFF in studio to talk about the chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. And as you probably know, the public debate rages on. This despite the Equality Court ruling that the song was not hate speech in 2022. Frel Forum has appealed that ruling. Here in studio, a heated debate between the EFF and Frel Forum ensued over the song. This is what transpired.
Only a few people can murder people. And we did not hear the EFF condemn the slitting of the throat of Theo Bakker a day after they sang this. They did not condemn it. So for them now
Why? Why should we condemn it?
Because it's a person that's murdered.
6,200 people die in this country now, January to March. How many murderers must we condemn? Must we condemn all of them?
Okay.
What's special about white death that you think it must be elevated about everyone else's?
No, you see.
Why? Why do you exceptionalize white death so much? Above the death of thousands of people in this country. How many people must we condemn? How many murderers do you want us to condemn? Why must we condemn white people who are because white people are murderers? What's special about white people that we must condemn those? So why do you want us to condemn them? Why must we condemn specific murderers? Why do you want us to condemn specific murderers? On what basis?
Because you think that they should be murdered.
You know, the lack of sophistication that we're dealing with here, because we've explained time and time again that kill the poor, kill the farmer is a chant against the system of oppression, a system of economic exclusion of black people at the benefit of whites, a system of exclusion of black people from land, from mineral wealth, from the means of production. We've explained this. The court has accepted this logic. The court has stated this logic. Now, because courts are agreeing with the EFF's sound logic, suddenly they're not making sense. Suddenly they are wrong. Suddenly they are irrational. Suddenly we must mobilize international communities to stand against domestic courts of South Africa, because someone thinks that white death matters more than the death of black people in this country. And we must condemn murderers of whites, but all other murderers, it's by the way, the Cape Flats also we were worried.
I just want to ask.
This is racism.
If this is simply a literal, it should not be taken literally. Would he give an undertaking that the EFF will not call for the slaughter of white people?
We'll never do that.
Okay, so then it's clear.
We won't take an instruction to take undertakings by you. We're not going to take any instruction to make any undertaking from a Buremach AVP aspirant.
They did say, though, that it shouldn't be taken literally. Why can't we give the benefit of doubt to the South African public to say that they do understand that this has historical context? It is being sung now without the literal meaning or agitating the attack. Why can't we give South Africans the benefit of doubt?
No, we give the benefit of the doubt to the vast majority of black people in the country, because we know the vast majority of people are peaceful. But we are worried about those thugs that take this literally.
100,000 FNB Stadium thugs.
Yeah, well, we know after you failed on the 20th of March, they had to use liquor, threats for the public representatives, food and T-shirts to fill up the stadium. They had to try and save face after they failed dismally.
How many people have died?
They were defeated on the 20th.
How can you prove it? Prove it. Prove how many people have died because of the challenge.
Let's take it. Prove that you're not willing to say you will not kill white people.
I'm not going to take any instruction from you to take any undertaking.
Maybe it's we're playing with regards to semantics, right? Maybe it's the heat of the moment and somebody doesn't want to admit something on this platform. But the general understanding is that no harm should be, should come to another person, right? And I think that is understood now, right? So why can't we meet in the center here? Is it all about just the public bluster? Is that what we're dealing with?
They want money. They need money. They have no interest in meeting in the middle. They need the narrative of genocide to rise so they can fundraise to go to the bushes and shoot at paper targets. This is what they need. Frel Forum survives on creating a false narrative of genocide and farm murders in South Africa as if they're at an exponential rate above general crime in South Africa. They exceptionalize themselves because they think white lives matter more than black lives. They need money. They fundraise about stoking Swart. They've done this in 1994. When Mandela became president, they said there's going to be a genocide. It didn't happen. When Mandela died, they said there's going to be a genocide. It didn't happen. Now we're going into one of the most landmark elections in 2024, and the EFF has scared them with FNP Stadium. Now they must stoke another genocidal trap because they need money.
I go to my digital audience.
He's just ill-informed. AfriForum didn't exist in 1994. We only found it in 2007. But can I just
last point to you, and then we go to the audience.
Say one thing to what he said. He said we don't want to meet the middle ground. We had, in the first case when this happened, we decided and went into a mediation process with Julius Malema and the ANC to solve this problem, with Julius Malema sitting there. And in the end, it was agreed that the ANC and Julius Malema will ask their supporters not to sing it. So you have a man now that says... he spoke and we agreed on that, and he just turned his back on that.
We're not the ANC.
So we cannot. You're with Julius Malema. His name was. He was involved.
He's not the ANC.
Siphelele, you have undertaken a study with regards to the psychological effects of struggle songs. Help us understand, what did you find?
What I found is that struggle songs have quite a potential of uniting and healing those that are engaged in a struggle. They play a significant role also in identity and also in chanting a way forward in terms of nation building and also in terms of uniting. So in terms of the current debate then, I don't think that there is anything that is wrong with the singing of struggle songs, because we have to remember, in listening to the conversation between Sinao and the representative of AfriForum, the point that they seem to be emphasizing is the one of peace. But how then do we have peace without any form of justice?
Kim, let's hear from you, then Sheldon.
What a wonderful program. Brilliance is always from the EFF leadership. And I speak on this forum as a very ashamed white South African, as I am every day, because we have the AfriForum individuals speaking about the EFF having no morals, but it is white South Africans who have had no moral compass, that we have never accounted for the great atrocities that we committed against black South Africans. And now the white man still has the arrogance to speak about what a black child should sing. It's absolutely outrageous. I mean, this is the height of white supremacy that we're still having 30 years into democracy. I'm ashamed and I'm horrified that a white man still thinks he governs this country and he can tell black, thinking, brilliant young youth what to believe.
For me, I firmly denounce the Kill the Boer song and any form of hate speech that promotes violence and animosity towards any racial group. It is essential to foster a culture of respect, tolerance and understanding amongst our diverse communities, first of all. We need to promote unity. Peaceful coexistence should be our goal, and we must work together to build bridges of communication.
So how do we get to this better place? How do we come together as a nation to forge ahead without kind of bringing our own biases?
We're not going to be violent, polarizing people like they're doing. We're going to work in communities, as we've done now for many years, to go into a community that says, let's start an agricultural project. And there are numbers of them.
Land. That's why you
we do it on traditional. We do it on traditional land. Those traditional communities that you disrespect. So we work
last word to you. 30 seconds.
Look, we're going to continue to sing our liberation songs. No one is going to stop us. We're going to defeat them in court. We're very confident. If that book that they wrote together with Ernst Roots is what they're relying on, we're going to defeat them dismally. And we're going to proceed to fight for economic freedom in this country. We're going to win the elections in 2024 outrightly in their face, and there's nothing they can do about it. The same pains they are feeling from the 10th anniversary rally of the FNP Stadium, they're going to feel them in 2024 next year when we win these elections. And we're going to ensure that some right-wing pressure group does not dictate the narrative and discourse in South Africa. They will never do so. They'll never tell the EFF how high to jump. They're going to be governed by the EFF and operate under the terms and conditions of the black majority of this country.
We've defeated you 7 times in court.
Thank you very much.
We've run out of time, but thank you very much indeed. Look, 1 hour is never enough. Right? 1 hour is never, but I thank you for both coming to studio in person to debate this. I think it's important that we get to a better place.
A song will always be a song, and it's a struggle song. It's more of a chant to me. I think it's provoking violence. It's completely unnecessary. You know, wherever the song stems from is irrelevant, but it's certainly just provoking unnecessary violence. You know, at a time where I think we're trying to move forward and break down, you know, racial barriers.
As much as they may say that it was a struggle song, but for someone in that race, they might feel that it's appointed to them, the same way that we would feel if it was the other way around.
So kill the farmer, kill the Boer, the same way it was sang before. We are still singing it in the same perspective, to trying to say we want to demolish the oppression.
Look, I know it is a song that has always been sung, but the problem is with trying to bring people together, I don't think it's very good. I think we should strive to just do the right thing and not sing songs that cause anxiety to people.
The song was necessary at a time when change needed to happen, but at the moment I think it distracts away from the real work that needs to be done.
But if you bring that song now, my question is it relevant?
It's not about killing them. We are trying to kill the system that was imposed on us by the farmers, by the Boer. That's what the song means.
The song itself is just a bunch of words, but it's the intent. And if the song is meant to be taken literally, then absolutely it's deplorable. We should never be threatening people, whether by song or by any other sort of, oral outburst. But even if it's not meant to be taken literally, it's just inappropriate.
It's going to separate everybody. That's what it's going to do. And if we want, as I said, if we want this country to go forward, we have to do it together.
No doubt, an interesting debate indeed. All right, let's take a short break. When we return, we take a look at our second most watched episode on the socials, investigations into the alleged gold mafia. More after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're looking back at some of the topical stories of the year 2023, and we ask you tonight on our question of the week, which stories caught your eye and caught your attention in 2023? You can let us know on X. Our handle is @itstopical SABC. Now, do you remember the story about Zimbabwe's alleged gold mafia as highlighted by an Al Jazeera documentary? Journalist and producer Alexander James stood by his story, and as you'll see during our discussion. But first, let's get you some context. The investigation unit showed us how alleged smugglers use gold to, allegedly launder billions of dollars of so-called dirty money. Take a look at this, right? This is basically how they define it. Let's give you a sense of what we're talking about here. The first one they say is gold mafia have licenses to buy gold from Zimbabwean miners for fidelity. It goes on to say that gold mafia also have gold export licenses with the Reserve Bank miners subsidiaries. Also saying that the gold mafia exports Zimbabwean gold to Dubai. The fourth one was gold mafia instructs undercover reporters to set up gold trading companies in Dubai. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the countries in a short while. Dirty money, as they say, is brought back to Zimbabwe by their couriers, and the dirty money is disguised as revenue from the legal sales of gold. And finally, in Dubai, money from the gold sales is transferred to bank accounts as legitimate.
What I don't agree with the Al Jazeera documentary is that they scandalize the whole country. They scandalize every participant in the industry. They also scandalize the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe as if it's enabling it and is facilitating it. If you watch the documentary, the people who are doing or who are claiming to be doing it, we didn't see any evidence that they're actually doing it. Mm-hmm. We saw them claiming that they're doing it. Mm-hmm. These people, they actually said the Reserve Bank don't know where they're getting the money. Because they license them, but the money they're bringing, no one can know that this money came from selling tomatoes or selling onions. They don't know. And that's what money laundering is about. It's a crime if it is done.
Yes.
And those who do it, they try to evade the controls. That's what happens here. So there is no shock that there is gold smuggling. It has been happening all over. It always happens. And if someone is caught, they have to be arrested and for it.
Let's take it to Alexander James, who is a producer from Al Jazeera's investigative unit. Alexander, good to have you on the program. Kudzai says that Al Jazeera is, use the word again?
They're scandalizing the whole industry.
The issue. Scandalizing
and
the issue.
Government.
What's your response?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. And I think Kudzai is right. It is a scandalous issue which we are shining the light on here. I disagree with some of the things that he has said in terms of the artisanal mining sector being entirely licensed in that way. One of the key players in the gold mafia, Ewan McMillan, who has a long history of gold smuggling himself, but is licensed by Fidelity to be a gold buyer for them. He is very open about the fact that he requires no paperwork whatsoever from the miners who he's buying the gold from. And Kudzai's right to say that this is scandalous. What our documentary has uncovered, it is scandalous, and it shows essentially how a gold mafia sits at the very heart of Zimbabwe's gold trade.
It was a hot topic at the time and definitely talks to what this show is all about. If it's topical, we're going to talk about it. Speaking of which, let's take you further afield. We know that the war between Russia and Ukraine continues unabated, with thousands of people losing their lives and hundreds displaced. The ICC issued a warrant of arrest for Russian President Vladimir Putin in the context of the situation in Ukraine. The ball was in South Africa's court as Putin was expected to attend the BRICS summit in Johannesburg, you'll remember. It was later confirmed he'll take part virtually. Now, opinions remained divided, as seen during our studio discussions, as our guests, including the Premier of the Western Cape, Alan Winde, and ANC Deputy Chairperson of International Relations, Obed Bapela, faced off. But first, the African delegation's intervention was not without drama, as President Cyril Ramaphosa's security personnel and South African journalists were stuck for hours in Poland. Let's remind you about how this all unfolded.
The aircraft transporting over 100 security personnel with heavy gunfire was prevented from entering Poland without original permits for their weapons.
The head of the Presidential Protection Unit says they're being sabotaged by the Polish government.
It has never happened that we have stood opposite anyone with a diplomatic passport.
President Ramaphosa arrived early via train into the Ukrainian capital, and it did not take long for him to be met by the soundtrack, which is becoming all too familiar for that city.
The quest for peace, in our view, is an important one, and the launching of the missiles today, in our view, does not deter us.
Russia is blocking all the possible initiatives. We already had this in the past. Once again, we had the situation with the Minsk. We're not going to restart this story once again.
The delegation of African leaders is in St. Petersburg for talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
A number of proposals that have been put forward, we believe, lay a foundation for a peace to be found. And this is precisely what we would like to explore, so that all of us together can contribute to bringing this war to an end.
каких-то других договоренностей.
They rejected that. Where are the guarantees that they will not reject any other agreements that we might make? Even in these conditions, we have never rejected the idea of negotiating with them. It wasn't us, it was the leadership of Ukraine who said they would not negotiate with us. Moreover, the acting president of Ukraine signed a decree prohibiting to negotiate with Russia. I fully understand your concerns. I sympathize with them, and we are ready to consider all of your proposals, but we have never rejected the idea of negotiations. It was Ukraine who did it.
От нас хотят.
If President Putin comes to South Africa, he will be coming at the invitation of President Ramaphosa, and we have a responsibility to make sure the guests are treated properly.
From what I've read and seen, Putin is not really like a good person. He's more like a dictator. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but yeah. So if we're talking about humanity, of course, he needs to be arrested. But I mean, it's Putin. He has the power. I don't think South Africa has like the power to like arrest Putin.
Do I think that Putin should be arrested? Absolutely. I think he should be held accountable for the horrible injustice to humanity.
I don't think
Putin has to be arrested. If they don't arrest him, it will mean South Africa is weak, especially as part of BRICS. So it's important to arrest all people who commit crime against humanity when they come here.
Against the law, against humanity in South Africa.
If Vladimir Putin comes here, our law enforcement officers will arrest him and send him to the courts.
No, I don't think arresting Putin will be easy, because in South Africa we don't have the capacity to do that. I don't think I capacity is South Africa. We should not let Putin come in South Africa because he will cause a lot of problems for us. Russia should do that themselves.
President Putin is more than welcome here, and no one is going to arrest President Putin.
South Africa will never arrest Putin. It's a declaration of war, as already Dmitry Medvedev said, that any country that arrests Putin, you are declaring war on us. And it's like when you say you go and arrest the president of U.S., no one will arrest the president of U.S. Nowhere in the world will they ever be arrested. And Russia, China, and the U.S. are in the same caliber of the countries that you will not just any country arresting them. But obviously we respect the law, and then we'll then have to look at the options available within the law. That does not happen. Right. And I think that is where we are, and then let's see what unfolds between now and before August.
As has been said, by Mr. Bapela, that, of course, it's a declaration of war. But we have an obligation in South Africa, because we are a signatory to the statute, the Rome Statute. We are part of the ICC. We cannot turn a blind eye to it. And if the national government is flip-flopping, we won't flip-flop in the Western Cape. We are obliged to arrest him. We had a president and a leading political party in our country flip-flopping as whether we were able to or not able to, or we were going to even abide by the ICC court order. Well, quite frankly, in the Western Cape, I believe in the rule of law. I believe in our constitution. And in this province, we would carry it through.
Responding to Alan Winde, when he condemns, obviously, Putin and whatever he's been alleged to have done, but he's quiet about what George Bush did together with Tony Blair when they went to Iraq under the false accusation of weapons of mass destruction, and they found none. And then the ICC is quiet. And I think it's us who must then say, George Bush and Tony Blair must be indicted like they are doing if they want to be a body of respect. And what Amnesty International also recently, in 2 weeks' time, said that the credibility of the court is now threatened because of the biasness and inconsistency. If they want to push the law, they must push it for everybody. Putin is not a member, Russia is not a member, so they must also go for those US leaders. They know that they have been sanctioned already, unilaterally, all of them, those who are the judges today. And then obviously US has threatened that should any one of them be arrested, they will invade Hague and then take out any US person there. What type of a body is that? And we are staying in because of the following reasons, and why we rescinded. Probably South Africans do not know. We were approached by the Palestinians, we were approached by the Western Sahara, Polisario, we were also approached by Venezuela, who also want to indict certain people who have committed a gruesome violation on human rights in their own countries. And they want South Africa and other allies to stay in there so that we can lobby for them, so that their cases, including the issue of Palestine and Israel. So that is why then we then said to resign and say we can't abandon the cause of those struggles also. And then that is why, but obviously the ultimatum element that if all else fails, there will come a time where South Africa makes a final determination whether we stay or we don't stay. But for now, we are staying with the hope of changing the Rome Statute.
Now to a formation that some say was meant to shake the geopolitical tectonic plates, the 15th BRICS Summit. It was held here in South Africa back in August. But before the summit, we needed, well, more of an understanding of the formation. So to help us break down the BRICS identity and the global role, we were joined by Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, as well as founder of the Institute for Security Studies, Dr. Yaki Saliers, who is also a political scientist. Watch.
BRICS is essentially a forum of countries of the South, or that identify themselves as countries of the South, and often this is a reference to developing countries. What makes it, I think, an interesting forum is the presence of India and China within that grouping. These are very large countries with significant number in terms of population, as well as countries that have really made strides in terms of development in the last 20 years. So it brings together countries that see themselves as progressive, as committed to democracy, and also focused on pursuing the agenda of development for their people. But these are friendships, there are partnerships, there are relations that we are building, and they should be built to a good purpose with all countries of the world. Well, we are part of many other formations. We're part of G20, for example, as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So we sit there together, and often we would bring the perspectives that emanate from BRICS into that forum. And I think our presence in G20 has been quite important in this period of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, because there's almost been a temptation to make G20 a security organ focused on matters of conflict, rather than its original establishment, which was a focus on issues of economy and particularly economic development, with the South coming together with G20 members. So I think the BRICS presence there has been very useful to kind of bring us back to the key issues for which G20 exists. I would want to just say that we should also recall that while we have BRICS, South Africa also has bilateral relations with each of the members of the forum, and we advance the interests of South Africa at that bilateral level. So you wouldn't, within the BRICS meetings, be discussing the fact that Brazil put a particular tariff on chicken thighs or something, but in the bilateral with Brazil, we would pursue that. So I do want to say to the public that we should understand there may be different topical issues that we would discuss in the BRICS context, and it may very well be much more the global issues, whereas in the bilateral partnerships, we may very well come down to the key aspects that affect us as the two countries. I also finally want to say that we in BRICS, the one shared aspect we have is belief that we don't displace the United Nations. It's the premier multilateral institution in the view of all the BRICS members. We do believe there should be reform, but the UN exists as the premier global body.
The only way in which we are going to restructure the global financial and security architecture, including the UN, is through pressure. I'm afraid if we look to the West to do this on their own, they will not. And BRICS represents a very important pressure group. And it's important that we reform the global system and not try and create a new one or to break it down and think that we can establish a different system. So I think in that sense, BRICS is a very important pressure group. And it's important that BRICS not be seen as some kind of a ganging up against the West. We have to find, possibly within the context of an expanded G20, a place where these groupings also come together beyond the General Assembly and the other fora. Because we have very divergent views in the world, and there are very divergent views and values within BRICS. And this is something that will eventually also come to the fore, because BRICS is not, doesn't have a set of common values to the extent that, for example, the G7 has, and that will play itself out. But in the meanwhile, I think BRICS reflects the urgency of global reform. You know, something like 21 African countries at the moment are facing debt distress. Africa needs 2-3 times the debt that we have at the moment. We can't afford it because of the interest rates that we pay and so on and so forth. There are many factors that can have a positive impact that can be engineered through BRICS. So I think that generally it reflects a more complicated, diverse world, and that journey has started.
It's important. Why? The BRICS summit made several decisions regarding a fairer and more inclusive world order. Announcing the outcomes of the BRICS summit, President Cyril Ramaphosa said one of the key decisions taken by the BRICS members countries was to support the call for a comprehensive reform of the United Nations, including its Security Council, with a view to making it, among other things, more democratic, more effective, and more efficient. The summit also said that there should be a greater representation of developing economy countries in the United Nations Security Council's membership. All right, let's take a short break. When we return, we take a look at a good news story that brought unity among South Africans. More next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical on this New Year's Eve. We are in the last segment of our highlight show and about to reveal what many people thought was the biggest story of the year in South Africa. But before we do that, let's have our regular Word on the Street feature, the final one for 2023, to hear from you which stories caught your eye. This is what you had to say.
Two stories in particular. On a sad note was the all the war stories that are going on between Hamas and the Gaza Strip when they took all the hostages from the music festival. That to me stood out very much. And then on a positive note was the Rugby World Cup. It had such great coverage, and our guys were so well supported by the country, and it was just such an uplifting story.
The story about this Besta and the lady doctor Nandiba, those stories were quite exciting for me, and they stood out quite a lot. I think these people, they're very calculative. For people to evade the law like that, they must be very smart.
The story that stood out for me is it's not shedding in Tambo Besta, obviously. How can someone walk out of prison like that? Just walk out of prison. And with this load shedding, now they're giving it to these guys from ESCOM to City Power, and schedule is screwed up, eh?
The story, actually, let me say stories, that stood out for me for this year, although in a negative way. The attack on Ukraine by Russia.
I have no expectations for 2024. If you expect anything, you'll always be disappointed.
Well, it's a big year. It's election year. I expect lots of campaigning,
in between, before May, the election date. Just a lot of political activity, really.
Improving in every way that we can, even if it's 5-10%, as a country, as private citizens, as NGOs, whatever, doing what we can to help South Africa just get a bit better.
I think the ANC is going to drop again. I think they might go below 50%. I think there's going to be quite a bit of an increase in the smaller parties.
It's a story that continues to inspire. The Springboks' record-breaking 4th Rugby World Cup victory. They played against New Zealand in the final, and those scenes you will agree, remain etched in our minds for a long, long time. There was another element, though, to this win, a debate about development and transformation plans by SA Rugby, which have fostered a culture of inclusivity, success and nation building. And the question was, and I guess still remains, can other sporting codes emulate this? Lita Mpondwana from the Department of Sport and also former Springbok Lawrence Topical joined us on this discussion, this crucial discussion. But first, the word on the street feature following that 12-11 win by the high-flying Springboks.
That's the beauty of sport. It brings people together, it unites people, and gosh, it's euphoric.
Just because we support the same country, now we have a bond together, and I think it's a lovely sport that unites the country, and we all come as one, and I think it's just an amazing sport that it brings the country together.
Rugby is accessible to all races, so I think that's where the whole thing about bringing people together, because even people who don't have resources, they can't see, or in their villages, they still play rugby compared to the guys who go to motor seal schools or private schools with all the resources. So you've got a sport that's being played by everyone.
Rugby can unite. It's not only rugby, it's all sport that can unite people. It always has done since 1995. It united this country, and it's doing it again.
Whenever it is rugby, if you have noticed, all the colors, all the ages, we come together to be one. And that is what rugby represents to me, the unity, the fight that Mandela fought for. It is coming to life, especially during rugby time.
Saying rugby unites you. I've made so many different friends tonight. Nobody had tables, they were overcrowded. We all joined together and just made friends. It's really beautiful to see such a rainbow nation come together.
Like I said, it's not DNA, it's RSA. There's no race, there's no color. We one nation. We will unite.
Earlier on, we were speaking with Tando with regards to the journey that the Springboks had to come through over the years since '95. How has that journey shaped to what we saw last night?
Since '95, I think a lot has happened. A lot of skill, a lot of different characters have come through. A lot of coaches, a lot of processes have come through in terms of moving the game forward. Remember, the game is moving. So if you don't move with the game, you tend to be found to be stuck in sort of the past. The past is important because it's a history that we all learn from. But you need to always look ahead as well, how to take the past and merge it with the future and bring the youngsters in modern times and how they actually adjust to the modern game. You could see the mix there. I mean, Coach Rassi really pushing the barriers. First of all, selecting multiple players playing the same position in one team, which is not unheard of, but utilizing them differently. I mean, this is just the nature of the game. Some coaches thinking, man, they're even confused as to what a role of a winger, what a role of a center is. At the end of the day, remember, if you're a rugby player, there's certain basics that you are required to be able to do, although you still got your core job to do as a rugby player. And that's how rugby has actually progressed.
Yeah. Let me bring in Lita with regards to, look, we spoke about the issue of grassroots resources, infrastructure, the bottom up, as well as the top down. Somewhere in the middle, we need to have facilities in order to nurture talent that's coming through, because there's ample talent around the country. What's government doing in order to harness this?
Well, good evening, Glenn, and the viewers.
one of the priorities of Minister Zizi Godwa in his tenure as Sports, Arts and Culture Minister has been to deepen the investment in development of sports. And central to that has been investing in rural sport development and those underserviced communities. So over the past several months especially, we've seen initiatives where the ministry and the department have been going around the country developing multi-purpose sports courts in underserviced communities around the country and in villages, which is where we believe you'd find that unhidden talent and then enable them to be nurtured from the bottom up. The minister has said, of course, that government can't do it alone, and his rallying call has been both for the public sector and the private sector to work together to further make this a reality where around the country, sports federations could go to the deepest of communities in the country and unearth talent just to further enhance South African sport. Because sport plays a great role in fostering national unity, as you've seen with the Springboks, and building social cohesion.
The Springboks, champions of the world. Halala Boka Boka. Halala.
Long live that feeling of hope and unity. Speaking of which, here's my take. 2023 was a tough year in many respects. The economy, high interest rates, you probably lost a loved one, you're probably dealing with an illness. There's no guarantees that 2024 will be better, but there's always hope that it will be. Hope allows us to pursue happiness. It springs us into action. It allows us to find ways of living within our means, looking for avenues of opportunity in order to pay our bonds, to put food on the table. Hope is a feeling of expectation and trust that things will eventually be okay. Einstein sums it up neatly for me. Learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning. After all, there's so much that is a matter of common concern. So, as I invite the It's Topical team to join me on set, the men and women who are the true engine of this program, I say let's advance our understanding for the purpose of the common good. Here's to better. Happy New Year, everybody.